When it comes to painting happy trees, no one did it better than Bob Ross. His demeanour was kind and gentle, his presentation was warm and inviting, his hair was simply amazing, as was his abilities to paint pictures of natural landscapes. Yep, there really was no one quite like Bob Ross. From 1983 to 1994, Ross hosted the Joy of Painting TV show, where each episode he would start off with a blank canvas and over the course of 30 minutes would turn said canvas into a masterpiece. There was always that moment where you thought Ross had screwed up his painting, but that stress and anxiety would quickly be put to rest as all his paintings worked out eventually and looked amazing. Thanks to his relaxing voice and alluring kindness and painting panache, Ross went on to become a pop cultural legend even now over 25 years after his death. So seeing how Thanksgiving is coming up, I thought I'd do an episode that's nice and warm. No controversies, no dilemmas, no conflicts, just something really warm and fuzzy. And what better way to do this than to look into Bob Ross? Well, I've got my Bob Ross t-shirt, and I've also got my Bob Ross jigsaw puzzle, as well as my Bob Ross vinyl action figure. So, let's beat the devil out of it and check it out. Number 10, he wasn't always so calm and soothing. Robert Norman Ross was born in 1942 at Daytona Beach, Florida. He dropped out of school in the 9th grade, and at the age of 18 he joined the Air Force. And although Ross is known for his calm and gentle demeanour, back then he was anything but kind and gentle, as he climbed up the ranks of Master Sergeant to First Sergeant. A job which required him to be mean and tough, and after 20 years in the job he decided that he had enough of being mean and shouting all the time, so he left the Air Force vowing never to raise his voice again, and thus this would lead to the kind and gentle Bob Ross that we all know. However, it was during his time in the Air Force where he discovered his love of painting, where he attended painting classes and he was hooked. Number 9, Bob Ross grew up looking after injured animals. A common theme on the Joy of Painting show was Bob Ross's love for animals. Often he would introduce the audience to animals that he had rescued and expressed how cute and adorable they were, and Ross always maintained that as soon as the animals were better and healed up, that he would release them back into the wild. From squirrels to deers and birds, it seemed that Ross loved all creatures great and small. However, this wasn't a gimmick for the show. Ross spent his childhood tending to the needs of sick and injured animals, including snakes and alligators. Apparently one time his mother found him tending to an injured alligator in the family bathtub. I can actually remember watching an episode of The Joy of Painting once, where he mentioned that his pet alligator that he had as a kid had to be released back into the wild as it got too big, and Ross obviously didn't want to get eaten. So, yeah, Bob Ross may be kind and gentle, but he is still so hardcore, he had pet snakes and alligators. Number 8, Bob Ross lost a finger. Something I never even noticed about Bob Ross when watching The Joy of Painting was that he only had 9 fingers. I only realised this when it was pointed out to me. Now this goes back to Ross's teenage years, where he worked as a carpenter with his father, and sadly while on the job he accidentally cut off his left index finger with a wood saw while doing wood carving. Because of this, when filming The Joy of Painting, Ross didn't want his missing finger to stand out or frighten children. So we never see it, as the missing finger was always hidden by his painting palette, which often covered that part of his hand. So it was down to concealing and clever filming. Number 7, his signature hairstyle was a requirement. One of the most standout features about Bob Ross is his permed hairdo. We instantly associate Ross with his epic curls. However, Ross's hair isn't naturally curly. As you can see from earlier pictures of Ross, his hair was straight. It all goes back to his early days of teaching painting classes. Ross didn't have much money and couldn't afford to periodically be getting his hair cut, so he decided to perm his hair as it wouldn't require frequent haircuts. The only problem with this is when Ross's popularity and brand started to take off, his permed look became so iconic, he had to keep the hairstyle going on, as it had become part of his image. So for years, Ross would have to keep his perm going on, as it was now part of his public persona, despite the fact that he actually really didn't like having a permed hairdo. In his last few years while battling cancer, he even wore wigs to keep his permed image alive.
But, to be fair, Bob Ross without the perm just doesn't feel right.
Number 6. Bob Ross never got paid for the joy of painting. Bob Ross had a mentor and teacher called Bill Alexander, who taught Ross the quick wet-on-wet painting technique that we would see Ross go on to do in The Joy of Painting. Alexander had his own painting show called The Magic of Oil Painting, which ran from 1974 to 1982, where Ross then took over with a new show, that being The Joy of Painting. The show was broadcast on a public broadcasting television station network, otherwise known as PBS, which was a non-profit organisation, which meant Ross never got paid for his Joy of Painting TV show. Ross once said in an interview, "People see you on television, and they think you make the same amount of money that Clint Eastwood does, but this is PBS." So despite the show's popularity, he never made a cent off it per se. The main income that came from the show was Ross promoting his own brand of paints and supplies, which he would use to paint his pictures. So considering all those episodes he did, and the amount of years that he did it, it's amazing that he never actually got paid for it.
But I always got the feeling that for Bob Ross, it was more about his love of painting than it was profit.
Now, I said at the start of the episode that there were no controversies. Well, there was one minor controversy, and that came in the form of Bob Ross's teacher and mentor, Bill Alexander. After The Joy of Painting took off, Alexander said, "He betrayed me," and further said, he thinks that he can do it better. Despite the fact that, to my knowledge, Ross has never stated that he paints better than anyone. Also, historians have noted that Alexander didn't invent the wet-on-wet technique, as it's been around since the 15th century. But either way, it's a shame that their friendship soured. Number 5. The 3 paintings technique. The format of the show was a relatively simple one. It would see Ross standing in a studio in front of a black background, with just him and a canvas, where we would see him then paint a landscape picture. However, Ross didn't just paint one painting per episode, but 3. The first painting was made off camera, and was also kept off screen, but was nearby so Ross could use it as a reference when painting the second picture on camera. Then a third, more detailed painting was done, to be used for his instructional books, and most of his paintings would be donated to PBS stations. Let's also keep in mind that Ross only had 20 to 30 minutes to paint his pictures during recording, which were all done in one take. There are even some episodes where Ross mentions that he has to quickly wrap everything up and finish the painting as they were running out of time. But regardless of this, all his paintings turned out amazing, despite being a rushed job.
Something else that I've noticed is that every time Bob Ross beats the brush after washing it, he always giggles. Each time without fail, he's always giggling, as he seems to find it funny that doing it soaks the camera crew. Yeah, look, he was a fun and playful guy.
Despite it being a rushed job, Bob Ross was actually known for being able to film an entire season in just 2 days. Number 4. Longevity of painting. The Joy of Painting may have been a public broadcasting TV show, but it was a TV show that went a long way, as it lasted for 11 years, consisting of 31 seasons and a whopping 403 episodes, which is just an insane commitment. During the show's run, it would go on to win 3 Emmy Awards. Ross was so committed to The Joy of Painting, he was still making the show well into his battle with cancer, while he was no doubt quite ill. To put his dedication into perspective, the last episode of The Joy of Painting was broadcast in May 1994, and Ross would sadly pass away just over 1 year later in July 1995. So he kind of continued to paint pictures till the very end. Number 3. Creating a happy place. So we've already addressed Bob Ross's perm, but what about the rest of his presentation? Well, in each episode we would see him wear a button-up shirt and jeans. Ross chose this attire as he felt that it would be a timeless look. He also spoke in a way as if he was personally addressing the viewer, which helped with his warm and welcoming persona. Bob spoke once of his warm and happy approach in the show, and he said that's why he paints, because he's creating a world, the kind of world that he wants, one that is happy as he wants it to be. He further added that if you want to watch sad stuff, just watch the news. See, it's just impossible to not like the guy. Ross is set to have painted a staggering 30,000 paintings in his lifetime, which is just an amazing effort, and I have yet to see one that I thought wasn't good.
And always remember Bob Ross's philosophy with painting: there are no mistakes, just happy accidents. And he always often said that the world that you're creating on the canvas is your world and that there is no rules.
Number 2, planned spin-offs. Apparently Nintendo planned to release a Bob Ross video game, so not only will you be playing with power, but also happy little trees. Now before you get weirded out thinking Bob Ross was going to be jumping on Goombas and going into warp zones, the game was probably going to be more of an art game, similar to the style of Mario Paint, where you can colour the paintings yourself. You know, that kind of format. The production had several setbacks and delays, so it never ended up happening. Despite this, even to this day there are fans who are longing for a Bob Ross video game. Ross also planned to make a wildlife educational program for children. This would have been in line with his love for animals, where he teaches the viewers about wildlife, and the show was to be called Bob's World. But due to his declining health, the show never happened. Still though, Ross did manage to get several of his rescue animals in the joy of painting as mentioned. The most famous one was a squirrel called Peapod.
In fact, Peapod was so popular, he was even added to the Bob Ross vinyl figure. See? Right there.
Number 1, internet fame. Despite the fact that the last episode of The Joy of Painting was broadcast in 1994, and Ross has been passed away for 25 years now, the Bob Ross brand is more popular than ever, thanks to finding new life on social media. Thanks to The Joy of Painting episodes being made available on platforms like YouTube and Netflix, a whole new generation has come to appreciate Bob Ross and his kind and gentle philosophy. Thanks to his calm and soothing style of talking, he is also very popular in the ASMR community, with people watching his videos purely for relaxation purposes. I've also noticed he seems to be a popular cosplay choice too. I have seen many YouTubers cosplaying as Bob Ross, like this guy. Yeah, how cringy is that? Heck, even Deadpool cosplayed as Bob Ross as a part of the Deadpool 2 promotion. I think if Bob Ross knew of his current popularity and how much people love him now, he would be absolutely delighted. What started with him standing in a studio with nothing but paint and a canvas in the early 80s has definitely gone a long way. I believe that this would bring him great happiness, and that he would consider us all to be his happy friends. Rest in peace, Bob Ross. I hope you're making many wonderful paintings in heaven.
The world of Bob Ross is a kind and happy place. A place that teaches us to enjoy often overlooked things, like the beauty of nature and the wonder of the sky with its many colours and clouds. He reminded us that nature can often put up an art show for us, in the form of a sunset or scenery. So let's enjoy this art show. And better yet, it's an art show that's free and for everyone. And because of his love for nature and animals and his kindness, I really respect the guy. And it gives me great joy knowing that although Bob is no longer with us, his legacy still lives on. And personally, I love watching his show. I mean, you always know that a painting's going to be pretty awesome when Ross whips out the Prussian blue. Anyway, I'm Minty. And remember, everyone needs a friend. Even mountains and trees and clouds. See ya!